Hello, it's Bart from Nature Manufacture. This time I would like to show you our terrain spline painting system. Basically, it's used to paint terrain globally. Then you could locally paint it by rivers and lakes. And also you could use this terrain spline system just to paint your terrain locally with a different rules. So let's maybe make few quick steps to show you how easy the painting is when the terrain have a predefined layers and you just use a profile that we prepared. So let's maybe create terrain spline. We place few points on the edges. Okay. Let's expand it so it will cover whole terrain. And let's import HTRP profiles. Why HTRP profiles? Because HTRP have a high blending during painting, and such a terrain have to be painted totally differently, because if you have a high blending, you rather use soft transition between textures just to bump some details during layers. If you use non-high blended materials, you rather use sharp transition just to avoid bad looking layers between textures. Okay, so yeah, let's add profile in such a way. We just drag and drop, for example, coast profile as it was designed for these textures on the terrain, and done. We have a whole terrain painted in a few seconds with high blending. This is why I told you that soft blends between textures are something that we rather use at high blended materials. Okay, so let's paint this terrain together. First of all, add terrain layers to your terrain. And they should be in granulation order, so the first layer should be sand. Then, for example, sand mix, grass mix, cliff or rocks or pebbles, and another rocky layer. These two layers could be reordered, so the pebbles will be before the cliff. Why we do this? To get nice blend out of the box, so the rocks will pop up from the grass, not in opposite way. It really depends from the terrain shader that you use. Some of the terrain shaders will handle that, so the order will have no matter, but some doesn't. Anyway, with high blending this is important. Without high blending it doesn't have matter. But let's paint the terrain. We go to terrain spline, to terrain panel paint, we add a layer, and the first layer will be a grass layer. And let's call it grass. Why we call the layers? Because if you will change the terrain object and it will have a different layers, if you will call grass, then you will know that in this profile grass is here, and even if the texture order will be different, you will simply change it to grass. So it's for you the information what this layer did. And now let's maybe add grass. Let's call it dry grass, and this layer will with noise will mix with our basic grass. If we use high blending, we rather use soft blends, so the power of the new layer should be lower and the noise power should be also lower. The noise size should be also a bit random value, because if you have a multiple layers with, for example, noise 100, you will duplicate the noise effects, and probably this would generate some ugly effects. So yeah, just use the follows that will simply, I would say, guarantee that noise will do not repeat. Okay, so we get nice noisy effect out of the box. But let's maybe accent some shapes of the terrain. So for that we will use convex and concave effects on another layers. Let's maybe add a dry grass effect on the tops of the hills. So first of all, I will explain how the effect works. Let's call it dry grass. Let's maybe use, we'll see which option we'll use. Let's maybe try with convex. Okay, so let's increase the power of the layer, and maybe let's change layer for a moment to understand what is happening. So we read data, terrain data, and with convex we place, maybe let's increase step size, it will be more visible, and with convex we place layer on the tops of the hills. If we will use concave, it will be in holes. So it's powerful tool, and if you will increase the steps but reduce the step size, you will get more noisy results. So it will read every single small terrain change, but it will ignore the bigger shape changes. If you will increase the step size but reduce number of steps, bigger shapes will be accent. So for the dry grass, we will use the tops of the terrain hills, and let's maybe reduce this effect. Okay. Or maybe let's as a first step, let's do opposite thing. So let's use the concave, and we will find green grass in the holes. Let's do this, and we use concave. Okay, maybe it's not so visible now, but it removed the dry grass from the holes, right? If we turn off that effect, you will see there is a noise is everywhere, but if we turn it on, it will remove from the holes. But let's call it grass concave, and let's now add dry grass con. So we will use convex, and we will paint the effects on the top. Okay, let's use noise. Maybe I will improve this effect just for a moment to show you what's happening. You see, I take the hilltops and place dry grass. Basically, with multiple layers, if you add soft effect, it just bump existing textures, but also add some new effects where it was cooled by, for example, where the dry grass was cooled by noise. So this convex will bring back the grass a bit in this area. Okay, so now we have a terrain which looks pretty okay. It doesn't have any cliff data, just grass. So let's maybe play with cliffs. First of all, there are few ways to paint your cliffs. Of course, you could use convex, right? But what you will notice that it doesn't cover all slopes, because convex will only read the changes of the slope, but it doesn't read the slope itself. So for that, I would say it doesn't paint on the slope itself, but it reads the slope changes. The same with concave, right? So let's turn off this convex and concave painting and use angle. So we will paint cliffs by slope. So at the 0 angle, we will paint it in with 0 value. At 90 degrees, we will paint it with value equal to 1. Let's maybe. Okay, it starts to appear. Let's improve this effect. So, for example, for 30 degrees or 20 degrees, we start to paint these rocks on the slopes. Okay, I think it looks pretty nice, but still, I think we could bump this with another concave effect. So we will paint. At the moment, we paint the terrain by slope, but we could add another layer. So we duplicate this layer. We will kick the angle painting, and we will use the convex painting. We will decrease the power, right? So it will be soft. We will increase the number of steps, but decrease the size of the step, right? Because we don't want such a big areas covered by this. And now we see that it starts to look somehow. Let's maybe decrease the power of the effect a bit. Okay. Or maybe step size is too big. Yeah. So we get nice rocks on the small bumps of the terrain, right? You could see that it generates these rocks right here. Yeah. If you, let's back maybe to the cliff and slope painting. If you use slope painting and you paint cliffs, let's maybe turn. First of all, let's call it cliff on X. This let's call the cliff slope, and let's turn off this convex for a moment, and you see that there is no noise on this cliff. I mean, you should add a noise which is not too strong. If you will increase the noise power, you will get gaps on the cliffs. If the noise will be soft, it will only noise the edges of the painted area, and I would say it's most important in places where this I would say this the slope is pretty linear. So if we turn on the noise here and we improve it, we will lose this straight line, right? But do not use it as a strong value, because it will start to generate gaps in the middle of the slope. So let's maybe leave this like that. Maybe it's a bit harder. Okay. Let's bring back the cliff convex. So now we have a cliffs, grass, and what we could do more in this area. Let's maybe add some pebbles. Let's go to pebbles. And let's place them on the concave area. Let's see where they are placed right now, and let's maybe make this effect very soft, so it will add some rocks only, not too much, but so it will be visible from time to time. And we could duplicate this effect. Let's call it pebbles concave, and this will be pebbles convex. So we place also rocks on the top, pebbles on the top. So let's reduce this value, maybe about, so it will be very soft. So it will just throw some rocks on the tops, right? From time to time, just nice effect. Okay, so we handle rocks and pebbles. Maybe even let's reduce the power of the noise. And so we add some pebbles on the terrain, right, from time to time. And you see that we have a C object here. And for this situation, you could, for example, create layer which called sand, sand. I would say, let's call it with level 20. Why I call it level 20? Because I know the C is around the level 20, height of 20, so about it. I think it was about 18. But I want to remember that I'm going to use height blending by height. So if I will use other terrain, I will remember that I set the height at 20. Do not surprise why something doesn't work or why it behaves strange. So let's use the sand layer and let's set height at 0 at 20. We'll see what will happen now. And let's improve this effect and turn off the noise. Seems it should be a bit stronger. Let's improve and of course turn off the convex and any other effects. Yeah, it's too strong now. Let's reduce this effect even more, so it will be more smooth. Okay, so we get sand on the floral border. You could bind this by lake object with river auto material, or you could bind this globally if you use any other water system. So yeah, so we get nice sand. Let's maybe add let's add another sand layer. Let's call it sand. The sand dirt. Yep, set value to 1, and or maybe even 2, and add some noise. Let's increase the power of the noise. Of course, let's change the noise tiling. Yeah, and maybe let's increase the tiling so it will appear more often. Okay, and we could reduce the power of the texture. Okay, but you see that it binds the dirt layer under the water, so we have to readjust height. So we will put this value to 1 and again at 0. In the middle at 7 meters it will be 0, at about 12 meters it will be 1. We'll see what will happen. Yep, we have to move this. Use the power. Does it help? Yep. It removed dirt from the specific height. So we get, of course we could adjust that so it will place more dirty sand here and less here. One more important thing, if this sand layer will be not strong enough, when you will add additional layer with high blending, it will start to, Unity terrain works like that, that it will start to remove the sand, the basic sand. So look, we lose the sand here because another texture appear and it removes the power of the sand textures in such a way. So if you will put the bigger value here on the as a base layer, you will add another layers after that, you will be sure that this layer in this place is at 100%, there is no mix, and if you would add another textures, it will do not mix other layers with this. So just another layer will appear without any other mixes from the other textures, because you know Unity terrain has splat map order. So this is how it works. Remember that if you want to completely change the textures and mix them again with different setup, be sure that you hit the 100% of the texture in that place. So you could add another textures with noises. Okay, of course you could change the order of the layers as well. Let me duplicate this. And let's add sand level 20 and call it pebbles, and we will get another effect. Maybe let's reduce the power. Maybe in this order. Let me find these pebbles I just set. And that's what I talk about earlier. If the noise will be the same between textures, it will generate issues. So let's maybe change the noise link. Let's increase the power of the texture. Okay, so we get nice pebbles now. And let's add this dirt layer. Let's decrease its power. or maybe a bit visit. Now we have a nice blend between pebbles, sand, and dirty sand. Okay, what we could do more with this terrain to show you the full possibilities. Maybe let's add snow. For that, maybe I will first of all remove one sand layer. Let's maybe use this layer, replace the fourth layer, and let's replace it and call it snow. Let's take the snow layer. Okay, so now we have a snow layer, and I will build a snow layer on the top of the mountain to show you how powerful will be this tool for such a case. Okay, so let's add snow. First of all, let's hide all these layers because we don't need them actually. And let's add another layer and we call it snow. But we will not use it as usual. I mean, I know that the first thing that you would think about with such a layer, let's restart all these hide rules and so on, would be that to use hide for the snow. So snow will appear only on the top. But to be honest, to get the best realistic effect, we will first of all use the hide, yes. Let's, for example, at 300, we set up 1, but at 0, we stop 0. That's okay. But this effect is pretty flat. I mean, of course, you have snow on the top, but you also have snow on the big angles. And of course, there is such a high that the snow exists on the high angles. But to be honest, if we want to create nice terrain, we will start to use our convex and concave rules. Let's use concave for our snow and see what will happen. First of all, let's increase the step size. The number of steps does not matter so much here. Let's place the snow a bit lower. Okay. Let's add some noises. Decrease the power of the noise. Increase power of the snow. Okay. So what effect we get here? This is the effect of the snow in the spring or snow in the lower heights. So the snow only left on the areas that are hidden from sun. So if you readjust that a bit, you could reduce the power. We could move again the snow to lower heights and let it make more sharp effect. So it will appear less softly. Yeah, so this is the snow in the spring. Now let's let's call it snow concave, and let's duplicate that. Let's remove the concave effect. Let's move the snow to higher heights, and you will get effect where we have a snow on the tops, which is everywhere, and snow on the lower heights, which is, I would say, more natural. But still, I think we could adjust that. because we probably don't want to have this snow on this big slopes. So just let's use the angle. Let's set at 0 to at 80 degrees. Let's set it to 0, and let's remove the snow from the angles even more. Okay, and now we could increase. Let's maybe remove the noise now. Okay, so now it looks much better. We could even reduce this angle so it will show up our cliffs on the snow like that. And now this looks much more natural, because on the higher parts of the terrain we have a snow which is almost everywhere beside the bigger slopes, but at lower part of the mountains we have a snow only in the holes, hidden from the snow, from the sun. Of course you could duplicate this layer again, and for super high tops remove the angle, so the even big slopes will be covered by snow in super high mountains, but we don't have such a mountain here. Okay, I paint for you this terrain from 0, and what is super powerful about what I showed you here? If you will change the height, for example, if you stamp the terrain, let's stamp it. Let's change it to add height. Let's increase the size of the stamp. Maybe let's choose kind of hill. Maybe not the dune. Maybe it could be volcano in the middle. And now if we click repaint, we get it painted. If we will place higher volcano and we repaint it, you see, so the super thing about this is that you made the rules, you can use it on different objects like terrain. You could paint it by different objects like terrain spline or river or lake, or even if you will, for example, let's duplicate that. Let's duplicate that. First of all, one thing, let's save this profile. Save profile from settings. So create profile, and let's call it, I don't know, tutorial. And now if you will duplicate it, the spline, we have this already, this tutorial spline on it, but maybe let's remove the points, remove all points, and let's do some local changes. You could do this by river, you could do this by lake, or just another terrain spline. And for example, we want to make this terrain more sandy, so let's put some sand. Let's increase the sand amount. You see, if we turn off the concaves or none, let's reduce the power. So you could make local changes on this, and you could even adjust how these local changes will appear, because you have a, I didn't talk about that before because we mostly use power value, but there's a power curve which also do the similar thing, but it's responsible from blend from the spline border. So let's maybe set it to 20 meters. So at 20 meters, sand will start appear. You see? So this specific layer for this specific region will start blend from 0 to 20 meters slowly. Okay. You could totally readjust that by turning off or on the layers, or you could mess with that and find the whole terrain. There is also option to if you use noise, it's also you could change the noise. If you set up that painting will go outside the spline, which is possible, you could set up noise for inside the spline object differently than outside. It's mostly useful for rivers, right? Because in fact with our river auto material you could create, for example, let's create river object. Let's choose kind of river, the big river. Let's make it bigger just for the tutorial. When we go to the terrain, let's go to the carve, and we could carve it. And if we will change the terrain to our tutorial and we replace the grass with sand, with another sand, and we turn off, for example, grass, we leave cliff, of course, pebbles as well, we will remove the snow, we could leave the sand from the sea, and if we paint the terrain, all the rules, so the slopes, the noises, everything is moved to the and painted by river. So let's maybe turn off the, let's carve the terrain under the spline again without any noises, and let's maybe paint it. So okay, but what will happen if you have multiple such objects? You know, you have a global terrain spline, you have a C object, and you have a local change of the local changes, right? Maybe let's intersect them. And you don't want to remember what is after what. I mean, which layer should, because for example, you generate this terrain on the fly. Then you have a tool that you have it's called Terrain Spline Manager, and you could read all splines from the scene. So let's get it, and you could change the order of the painting. So for example, you could paint it like that. Let's maybe remove the lake polygon because it doesn't have any rules set up. This is our lake polygon, the C object. Let's paint. Yes, and you see that it paint terrain, then it paint the river, and then it paint the local change, and then it paint river, then it paint river, so it override the local changes. If you will replace this order, you will see that the local change override the so I hope this will help you to understand all these features, and I hope this video will help you to generate nice terrains and paint them automatically. Remember that each spline object from river AutoMaterial, so sea objects, so lake, river, road, anything that you place could paint the terrain and in a specific order. So if you generate terrain on the fly, you could paint it by the splines, and if this terrain on the fly have a rivers generated by our API or your own API, you could also paint terrain under these rivers as well. So in fact, you could generate this kind of terrain on the fly with all these features of painting and carving, right? Because terrain will be painted and carved by our spline systems. Okay, I think it's all for this tutorial. I hope it will help you. If you are looking for such a nice tree, you will find it in our coast and dunes pack. It also contains some profiles for river AutoMaterial. And yeah, so that's all. Bye.